Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, this is the place to be. But before we get started, I do like to go over some news and announcements that I just found out about. I don't really have too much this week, but I did just want to mention that I have confirmed that I will be attending the Level Up event. It's going to be hosted in Woodbridge, New Jersey at the start of February, and it's a lot of fun. I do recommend going or at least checking it out. There's normally quite a lot of content creators and people from the community who show up as well, and I know they will be updating the website with a few of these as we get closer to the event, which like I said is still a few months away, but these things are good to book as soon as possible, especially if you're going to be doing any flying or traveling. Just make sure that you're getting the best price you possibly can. And this is organized and hosted by Alex over at Boardgame Co., who I also do like to mention here because him and I do work together keeping track of all these upcoming campaigns. So if you do like this video that I put together for you here today, you'll also want to check out Alex's channel because he just put out a video going over the month of October, and then you know what you can expect for that month. He also has a ton of other content as well that you'll definitely want to check out, and if you are looking for even more games, specifically historical war games, you'll want to check out Zilla Blitz because this is a genre that both Alex and I don't cover in near as much detail. He focuses exclusively on that genre and he looks at a few other crowdfunding platforms as well, so if that does sound like something you're interested in, I will have links to both Alex's channel and Michael's in the description down below. But that's it for an intro, and we do got quite a few games to cover, so let's check them out. In the first campaign we have launches on October 7th, and this one is called Work of Heart. And this board game is a bit of a love simulator. It does have a few different modes of play, but in each of these modes the players are going to be competing for a particular love interest, and each love interest is going to have a set of traits that represents their interests, as well as a quirk which is going to cause some special effects or changes to the game depending on which love interest is being used in that particular game. And this love interest is also going to have a schedule which is going to be dictating where they go or stay on a given round, and it also determines how much interest can be gained from them on a given round. Each player is going to be playing as their own character in this game with their own player board, which they're going to be using to keep track of their various traits and their progress building up those traits. All the traits are helpful, but of course you want to try and build up the ones that your love interest is most interested in, setting you up for the most success. The game uses a main board that has a bunch of larger locations on it, but then a bunch of smaller locations along the paths that players can stop on in order to get the associated benefit. The game plays over a series of days, and there's going to be 5 rounds per day, and then each player is going to have 1 turn per round. Players also maintain a hand of 2 action cards that you'll be able to spend on your turn, and you always draw back up to your hand limit of 2 at the end of your turn, so you are incentivized to use them. But all the players start in the middle of the board, and then on your turn you'll be able to roll a die and then move your pawn that number of movement points. If you happen to stop along one of the smaller spaces along these paths, that's going to be granting you the associated benefit there, which normally will help you upgrade your traits, but each of these spaces can only be used once in the entire game, and as soon as a player gains that benefit, you're going to be putting a token on that spot, blocking it out for the rest of the game. The exception here is that anytime a player moves through a location that has a building, you can choose to stop on that space even if you do have more movement points. These work very similar to the smaller spaces, but the difference here is that you can use them continually throughout the entirety of the game. One of the nice things about leveling up your traits is that if you level up one of your traits high enough, you're going to be unlocking a special ability specific to that trait, basically giving you some extra power for the rest of the game. Some of the other spaces here can allow you to pick up action or bonus cards, and there are also spaces that can trigger different events either for yourself or for all the players at the table, and there'll be multiple skill tests with different traits required to complete those skill tests and different rewards depending on how well you do. In order to actually win points with your love interest, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either fully level up any of the traits that the love interest is interested in, and that's going to be getting you some points, or instead, once per round, you can visit the location where your love interest is located, and then you can perform a skill test by rolling your dice as well as combining it with your stats in order to try and get some additional points. This is something that you pretty much want to do every single round, but it's always better if you're able to level up some of those traits before you do it. But the game continues like this until the end of the final round, and then players are going to be adding up their victory points, and the player with the most wins the game. Also launching on October 8th, we have Restart, which is a competitive game where players are time travelers, traveling between the past and the present, taking actions both as their adult and child selves in order to try and prevent a dystopian future. What's really cool about this is that this game actually offers a few different dystopian possibilities, and each one is going to be changing the game in a significant way. Players could be trying to prevent an environmental collapse, or maybe mass infertility, or maybe trying to fight back against a global pandemic, or maybe trying to prevent an evil totalitarian world government. To set up a game, you're going to be choosing one of these scenarios and then trying to earn the most victory points by trying to achieve the specific goals of that scenario. The game plays over 3 different ages that's represented by this tableau of cards, with each of the rows representing a different age. Each round, players are going to be using these cards or cards from their hand in order to take various actions. These different cards are one of the primary ways that players are going to be taking their actions in the game and acquiring different resources, and you're going to be maintaining a hand of these, and you can either play them into this tableau, or you could also play them into your player board. When placing them into your player board, you only have a few different slots to hold these cards, so you can only have a limited amount of them. You're going to be gaining the benefits of these cards for all your following rounds, and what's really nice about this is that each of these cards can actually grant you multiple benefits if you are able to provide enough resources into the track located on the left of that card. The higher that you're able to push up on that track, the more of the benefits you're going to be gaining. Each player also has 2 figures out on that shared tableau. One of the figures is going to be representing your character as an adult, while the other represents your character as a child. On your turn, you're allowed to move just one of these figures according to their movement restrictions. The adult can move to any card as long as there's not already a figure there, whereas the child is always going to be remaining in the row that represents the current era. So you're only able to move your child within that row, which doesn't give you a whole lot of options, but since the children automatically move up at the start of the next era, you can always try to position yourself better to get a card that you really want for the following round. But whenever you move one of these characters, you'll also be able to put one of the cards from your hand into that specific location, and that's going to be granting you the action of that card. But you can also create different patterns, and depending on what card you put into play, it can chain off the cards around it in order to give you some additional bonuses. The location of your adult character is going to be determining your primary action for the round, whereas the location of the child character will give you some sort of secondary action. Of course, it's always best if these 2 actions augment each other, so you will be trying to time these positionings along with which cards you play from your hand to try and get the best benefits as possible. But after the players have taken their actions, you're going to be moving into a special phase in the game, because this is the phase that's determined by the particular dystopian future that you're playing for this game. Each of the dystopian scenarios have their own unique mechanisms that players are going to be using to try and complete that specific scenario's goals. Each of these basically allow the player to choose one of 2 different actions at this point, but the actual nature of those actions can vary quite a bit between the different scenarios, with one of them allowing you to try and take your actions through dice rolling, whereas another might use a bit of abstract strategy and pattern building, whereas one actually uses a pad and pencil, and the last one will be using cards and set collection. But there is always a third option here as well, and that is just to skip taking an action entirely. And if you do choose to do that, you're going to be doubling the amount of resources that you get for this round. At the end of your turn, there's some actions you can take to get additional event cards for the following round, or to get additional resources, which are basically used throughout the entirety of the game for different purposes, such as taking different actions, improving actions, unlocking those different upgrades, or even as part of those scenario-specific actions or objectives. And the game continues like this over the 3 ages, and then the player with the most points at the end of it wins the game. But something else that is really interesting about this game that I hadn't mentioned yet is that rather than going back in time and making all these changes and going back into the future leading you to prosperity, players can instead choose to have avoided that particular dystopian future, but instead sent themselves down a path to a new one. If you want to play the game that way, you can actually chain these different dystopian futures together, maintaining your different upgrades and state and developments from game to game, with each game having a potentially different winner, but with all the games creating their own little bit of a story. If all that sounds interesting to you, you can check out this campaign, and I'll have it linked in the description down below. Also on the 8th, we have Away Team Bingo, and this one is a competitive roll and write where players are going to be exploring alien planets. This is a campaign that I did cover a couple weeks back, but it got pushed back until now. So I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this one is a competitive game where each player is going to have their own sheet of paper, and each sheet is going to have 3 different missions on it. Players are going to be using dice in order to send their crew out on these various missions to try and make different discoveries and make progress up various tracks in order to score victory points. Each round you're going to be choosing one of the 3 missions to go out on, and then each turn you're going to be rolling a die which is going to determine which column you're visiting in that mission, and then you're going to roll another die which is going to determine which row you're visiting. The intersection point there is going to be the location that you're going to have to resolve, and these can have all sorts of different effects like making progress on those various tracks, gaining discoveries, or potentially losing crew members. The game does offer a bit of push your luck because once you do this, you do have the option to continue the mission by rolling more dice to visit even more locations, but you can only ever visit each location once, and if you do end up somewhere that you've already visited, then you're just going to be reducing the value of that die by 1 until you get to a location that you haven't visited. The push your luck comes into play here because as you lose your crew members, you're going to be getting negative victory points at the end of the game for each crew member that you've lost, but also if you lose all your crew members within a mission, then you are going to be ending that mission early and losing everything that you have gained so far. Luckily, you do also have a teleporter, and you can use this up to 4 times per mission, and what this allows you to do is rather than visiting the location that you rolled, you can instead visit any of the locations that are adjacent to it. Of course, at any point after resolving a location, you can call an end to your mission to return safely back to your ship, and that's going to be triggering the end of the round for you. And once all the players have ended their rounds, then you'll be able to move into the following mission. Once all 3 of those missions are completed, you're going to be adding up all the victory points from the discoveries and the progress up your tracks, but then also subtracting any victory points for the number of crew that you lost. But then the player with the most victory points at that point wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also launching on the 8th, we have Above and Below Haunted, which is basically the Haunted standalone sequel of the game Above and Below, and this is a game where players are going to be competing to build up their own village, both above by building different buildings in their town, but then below as you're going to be building out different caves and caverns. The game does offer multiple ways to score victory points, either through completing adventures for reputation, or building those buildings or caverns, or even collecting and stashing different types of goods, with each new unique good that you find worth even more than the previous. This version of the game is going to be introducing some new adventures and villagers and buildings into the game, but something that is new to this game is that your buildings can actually become haunted, which can lose you reputation and eventually cost you victory points. The nice thing about this is that you can take an action to banish them, and when you do that, you're going to be banishing them to another player's board, and then they're going to be the ones that have to worry about it. There's also some new cave types in this game that are more dangerous and more difficult to acquire, but they do offer better rewards, including a new resource type that always counts towards your highest scoring good. There's also going to be a couple new tokens added into the game, and if you're able to acquire those, they can be spent to issue yourself more rerolls or to gain additional gold. And I should also mention that this one is my own personal pick of the week because I think both this game and the original look like a ton of fun, but I do like the additions with this new version of the game, especially giving you more options to mitigate your dice rolling. And I really like the way that you're able to build your caverns in this game because your caverns are a little bit more difficult to build than your actual buildings above the ground, because in order to build a cavern, you first have to complete an adventure, and then any completed adventures become a new space where you can build a cavern. I really like how those 2 actions are tied together like that, and it's really going to give you some incentive to make sure that you're doing those adventures. But if you're not familiar with the original game, this is a game that offers 5 different types of actions that players can take on their turn, and in order to take those actions, players are going to be spending these different worker tokens. Each player does start with 3 of these at the start of the game. They're going to have some different die values on them, as well as potentially some special icons. Whenever you actually spend one of these workers in order to perform one of those actions, they are going to get exhausted and put into the exhausted portion of your player board, and the only way that you can get them back is by allowing them to rest. The way this works is at the end of each round, you'll be able to return as many of these tokens equal to the amount of beds that you have in the buildings that you've built. Luckily, each player does start the game with just 1 free building already built, and that particular building does have 3 beds on it. But like I mentioned, each player is going to have one of these player boards, and there's the 5 different actions that you can perform, and you're going to be spending your character tokens in order to do those. The build action here allows you to buy one of the buildings from the shared display and then put it into your own personal display, gaining access to the benefits of that building. But in order to take that action, you do need to spend a worker that has one of these hammer icons on them. Some of these buildings can grant you different types of resources, which, like I said, will gain you victory points at the end of the game. And the way that you actually get those from your buildings is by performing the harvest action. You'll be able to put those resources on the track on the bottom of your board, starting from left to right with each unique resource that you find. And you're going to be stacking like resources and gaining the victory points for each of those. But of course, getting more of your later resources are the ones that will score you the most victory points. The recruit action allows players to gain another worker from the supply, but in order to take that action, you do need to have one of these workers with a quill on them. But the final action we have here is to draw an adventure card. In order to do this, it does require a minimum of 2 workers, but you can use any workers that you want. When you do that, you're going to be drawing one of these encounter cards, which is going to guide you to a section in the encounter book that you're going to have another player at the table read to you. This is going to present a few different options that they can choose to perform, with each of those coming with their own rewards, and also requiring a certain number of successes that you're going to be trying to get through dice rolling. Of course, spending more of your workers on this action does increase your chance of success, because for each of the workers that you use for that action, you're going to be able to roll 1 additional die. Each of these characters could also grant you with multiple successes depending on the character and depending on your dice roll, because you're going to be looking at the dice values in the top right corner of that character token, and if you're able to roll equal or higher than that value, then you're going to be getting the number of successes below it. For example, with this character on the right here, if you roll a 4 or higher, that's going to be granting you with 2 successes, whereas if you roll a 1 or higher, you're going to be getting 1 success. So this character at least does guarantee you at least 1 success, whereas these 2 on the left here, if you roll a 1, you're going to be getting 0 successes. Failing to get a success with a character does injure them, and they're going to be sent to the injured section of the board. And they're going to stay there permanently until you're able to spend a potion in order to get them to move to the exhausted section. But if you are able to complete the quest, you're going to be gaining the rewards of that quest. Then you'll also be able to keep the quest card as well and put it next to your board. And this is going to act as a new location space where you could then build a cavern. Caverns work just like the buildings, but they normally are a little bit more powerful. The game continues like this, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And also launching on the 8th, we have a new expansion to the game, Harakiri Blades of Honor, and this one is the Souls of Yomi expansion. And just so you know, you do need the original game in order to play this expansion, so if you do want the expansion, you do also have to buy the original content, unless you do already have it. But this new expansion is going to be adding a new campaign adventure with 4 new characters, as well as a new expansion that can be added to this campaign as well as the original. It's also going to offer 10 one-shot scenarios that you can play aside from the main campaign. There's going to be new ways that you can take advantage of your enemies, new actions you can perform, as well as new key dice that you'll be able to use to power up your more powerful actions. This means that this new expansion is going to be giving you a bunch of new ways that you can strategize, but it's not necessarily any easier because there is also a bunch of different negative effects that can happen to the players, including a corruption system that will make you more vulnerable the more that goes unattended. And also the enemies will have a bunch of new things that they can take advantage of in order to make your life more miserable. The original game has had some really nice ratings on BGG, and if this is one that you are interested in, you'll definitely want to check out the campaign because this is a game that's never going to be available in retail. I'm not trying to create FOMO here, I'm just trying to present the facts, and I do recommend trying this game before you buy it, especially if you're planning to get the expansion, because it does require the base game, which means that you're making a significant investment in order to do all that. But I also acknowledge that this game is probably not very easy to track down, and I couldn't find a tabletop simulator version of it either. So if neither of those are an option, I would just suggest watching as many playthrough videos as you possibly can. And if you do want to learn more about this campaign, I will have it linked down below. If you want to understand a little bit better about how the original game played, I did cover it during its original launch, and I'll go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is a cooperative dungeon crawler that takes place in Japan during the time of the samurai, but this also incorporates elements like magic and mythical creatures and takes place after a civil war that has thrown Japan into darkness. And there are a few different design decisions that I do think makes this game a little different from other dungeon crawlers. The first thing is that the map is a lot less linear than many other dungeon crawlers. It's quite a wide map with a grid pattern that gives players a lot of flexibility in the way that they move around, and the decisions that you make throughout the campaign are also going to affect the way that different locations are set up when you reach that area. And this doesn't just take into account the decisions that you've made, but also the successes and failures that you've made along the way. Players will also be able to decide how they want to grow their character's strengths, and although there is a main story arc, each character does have different personal missions that you can explore along the way. And the enemy AI is another area that does stand out in this game. There are some regular move and attack actions that they can perform like you might expect in your regular dungeon crawler, but this game does also add some variability and an aggressive stance that the enemies can move into that will unlock some different abilities that they can perform. And you're going to be rolling a die to determine which action they take, so you never know exactly what they're going to do, but you will have some idea of what they're capable of. And the game has some really nice artwork and miniatures for all the different characters that you can play as, and you're going to be playing with a hero board that's going to track your health, your traits, and stats, as well as a armor slot where players can lock in different upgrade cards that they find throughout the game, and players will be managing different stats like their power, which will help them with their attacks, their dexterity, which helps with movement, their knowledge, which allows them to use better equipment, and your spirit, which dictates how good you are at controlling your ki, which I believe helps with almost all your abilities in some way, and also helps you come back from the dead. Players will also be building up their relationship with their kami, which is a sort of god, and as players move up the ranks with their kami track, they'll be able to unlock some new powerful abilities. And each character does come with its own set of abilities, but on top of that, when you stack the different equipment that you can find, as well as the different kami, and also just the decisions that you make and how you develop your character, you'll have quite a lot of variability with the way that you can play this game. And all the miniatures in this one all look awesome. Not only do they have some really nice detail that, as long as they execute on the manufacturing, I think will look really good, they also have some really excellent action poses, and they even have these oversized miniatures which just look incredible, and I'm tempted to back just to get this dragon. Definitely an interesting campaign here with some really nice art and miniatures, so if you like the style of this one and it looks like a fun game to you, I have links to all these campaigns in the description below. Also on the 8th, we have a new expansion for the game Cloudspire, and this one is the Harbinger expansion. This is going to be adding a bunch of new factions into the game, as well as a conclusion to the Cloudspire story. There's going to be a bunch of other new additions to the game as well. You'll just have to check out on the campaign because they don't have those listed just yet. But Cloudspire is a really well-received free-for-all strategy battle game where you're trying to destroy your opponent's fortresses in order to win the game. And if you're not familiar with the original game, I'll let you know how that plays in just a second here, but first I want to mention that this one is our Discord pick of the week. And this is a game where players are going to be playing as their own factions that each have their own unique units, which are represented by these different chips here, and these units can have different stats for combat, a different cost in order to put them into play, as well as their own unique special abilities. Each player is also going to have their own unique fortress that can be upgraded in a whole variety of ways. And this is a game that plays over a series of rounds where at the start of each round an event card is going to get drawn that's going to affect all the players. This is mostly there to add a little bit of variety into the game, as players are going to have to roll with the punches if it's something negative, but it could also have some positive consequences, such as providing resources, providing health or upgrades, or even new actions that you can take advantage of, or it could do something completely different like adding some shared threats out onto the board. All players then gain 2 different types of resources, and the amount that you get of each of these resources each round does increase with every round. You're going to be using one of these resources like a currency to purchase things like upgrades for your fortress, or maybe additional units outside of your base faction, or even to purchase new terrain tiles that you'll be able to add onto the shared board. The other resource you can think of as your command points, and you're going to be spending those in order to deploy your units out on the board. The players are each going to be taking turns targeting an enemy unit out on the board, and then moving all of their units equal to their movement amount towards that unit. Moving past certain enemies could trigger them to attack you, and this is done through dice rolling. And there are also adventure tokens that your units could pass by, and they are optional to reveal, but if you do reveal it, you do have to face whatever consequences that token has, which usually will throw you in some sort of battle. But the nice thing about attempting these is that after resolving the effect of that token, you then have the option to build a tower there. Towers are nice because they can grant you some more control out on the board and help in attacking some of the other players that move past them. But wherever your unit does end up stopping, you'll be able to attack anything within the range of your unit. Range is determined by the specific unit stat, so it will vary from unit to unit. But if there are any enemies within your range that you want to attack, you're going to be attacking them through dice rolling, with each player attacking and defending by rolling an amount of die depending on their stats. Of course, knowing each of your special abilities is also important as well, because that can have big ramifications on the battle. Something that's neat that can help you a lot in battles is that when you deploy your units, you can actually choose to stack units on top of each other so that any unit on top protects the units below it. So that means that if a player is able to defeat your unit, you're instantly going to have another one full health ready to go beneath it. But the game continues like this until you've either destroyed your opponent's fortress or have destroyed enough of their units. If you're able to do that, then you win the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 8th, we have a brand new expansion for the Bad Karmas, and this one is called The Curse of Cthulhu, and this is going to be a standalone expansion, so you don't need the original game in order to play this one, but this will play very similar to that game, with a few small changes. First of all, this is going to be taking place in a Cthulhu universe, which means that you're going to be going up against a bunch of great old ones and different monsters from that universe, and there is going to be 4 new characters that players can choose to play as. The big difference with this one is that not only can the monsters kill you, but they can also drive you into madness. And the whole goal here is for players to try and defeat these monsters before they are either killed or driven to insanity. I did cover the original campaign back when it launched, and like I said, this one will be playing very similar to that original game, so if you do want to learn more about this one, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is a cooperative boss battler with 12 demigods known as Zodiacs, and these are going to be giant miniatures that you're going to have out on the board, and players are going to be trying to battle these different gods. As they evolve during the battle, react to the player's decisions, and actually change the environment where this combat is happening. And the gameplay for this one isn't too complex. It's going to be really easy to learn and teach, but it's going to be including something that's really unique, and I will get to that in a moment. But the way that you play this game is that players are going to be taking turns attacking the boss. At the start of each round, players decide the order that their characters are going to attack, and then they're also going to decide a stance. And the stance is going to allow for some different abilities or tendencies, and these can be different things like allowing that player to have quicker cooldowns that round, or a stronger defense, or other things like that. After players have decided their order and stance, they're going to be alternating turns, and on a player's turn they get a free movement action. Then they're going to be able to play cards to perform their additional actions, and these different actions can be things like different attacks, additional movements, or buffing up their team, or debuffing the enemy, or interacting in different ways with the environment. The boss in this one will react to the actions that the players perform, and it's going to be very intelligent in the way that it does that, because these are actually going to be smart miniatures. But the smarts does not come in the miniature itself, it actually comes with the game board, because this game board is actually going to have some digital components to it, which is going to allow the board to understand where your characters are and where the boss is, and it's going to integrate with an app that will track all the health and attacks and all the different actions that were performed. There's going to be a main app where all the game-based actions occur, and it's going to narrate a little bit about what's happening and allow the players to know what happens next. But then there's also an app for individual players to pull up on their phone where they'll be able to choose the cards that they want to play and whatever actions that they choose to do on their turn. Not only that, but they've also added some immersive audio and visual cues based on what's happening in the game. So some of these bases and components will light up depending on what actions were taken in the game, and different audio will trigger at certain times to add to that immersive experience. But it doesn't stop there, because the board will also come with its own set of smart dice, and as you roll these dice, this will also communicate to the board and the app which dice were rolled, and that will automatically be considered in the whole digital aspect of this game. So this one is not only a campaign for a boss battler with some beautiful miniatures, but it's also a campaign for a new and really innovative idea that's been in the works for quite a while. And this innovative game board is known as the Teberu, and this is not just designed for the specific game. You can think of this more like a game console like a Switch or a PlayStation or Xbox, where this just has the core interface to link all the different components together, but then you can make any game to interface with these. So I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more games like this in the future, and it will be really interesting to see what sort of new ideas come out of it. Also launching on the 8th, we have Shape Invaders, and this one is a competitive dexterity game where players are going to be flicking different ships in order to try and take out their opponent's motherships. This one is a campaign that I did cover in the past, so if you are interested to learn more about this one, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage. And this one's a head-to-head dexterity game where each player is going to have a mothership as well as a bunch of fighters and a few shields that they can use to try and defend and respawn their ship. The way the game works is that players will set up their pieces on opposite ends of the table, and then they're just going to be taking turns flicking their mothership or any of their fighters towards the other player's ships. The goal here is to try and knock them out of play, which will eliminate them from the game. But if you do get the mothership out of play, it can actually respawn onto any of the shields that are still in play. So those shields not only act as obstacles out on the table, but they can also act as extra lives if you still do have any available to you. Another fun detail with this game is that the pieces are made out of a high-end acrylic, which will give them a very premium feel and make them very durable when you do flick them into the other pieces. But they are also designed to be lit up from the edges. So if you want this game to have the best table presence that it possibly can, you can go ahead and set up a few lights on the edges of your table, and that's going to be lighting up the pieces and making it look like they're actually glowing. That's pretty much everything I have for this game, so if you are interested to check it out, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also launching on the 8th, we have Diamonds and Dinosaurs, and this one is a competitive pick-up and deliver game where all the players are going to be starting on a camp card and then slowly exploring outward in search of diamonds in a dinosaur-filled jungle. The goal of the game is to find a certain amount of these diamonds and bring them back to the camp in order to escape this jungle. The way the game works is that on a turn, you're going to be drawing and placing 2 cards out on the board in order to expand the forest. You'll then be able to pick up an item card, which are really nice to have because they can grant you with all sorts of different benefits, but then you'll be able to perform 3 different actions, and you have pretty much 2 choices when it comes to performing each action. You could either pick up a diamond on your location, or instead you could move to a new location by rolling your dice. The way that the movement works is that you'll be able to move to any adjacent tile that is equal or lesser than the amount you rolled on your dice. After you've performed your 3 actions, the dinosaurs are then going to move by drawing a dino card, which is going to dictate which dinos move and where they're going to move to. If a dinosaur ends up on the same tile as you, you're going to have to roll your dice again and try to roll a value higher than the card that you're currently located. If you're able to do that, you're going to successfully avoid those dinosaurs and keep your diamonds, and the first player that gets enough diamonds back to the camp wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 8th, we have Rumble Planet, and this one is a competitive battle royale game where each player is going to be choosing a character as well as a heroic item, and then you're going to be looting new items and upgrades throughout the game in order to augment your character and try to overcome your opponents and be the first to reach 18 points. But something that's really cool about this game is that the items that you find during the game don't last very long, and they will eventually go obsolete and fall apart. So you're going to want to stay on top of finding new items and making sure that your gear is always in as good shape as possible. The game plays over a series of rounds where every round your gear is going to be moving down this gear track until it eventually falls off and wears out. But each round also does start with the opportunity to purchase new items. You're going to be collecting credits throughout the game, which you can then trade for powerful weapons and armor, or instead you could trade for victory points. Players can also use crafting to create new items or augment the items that they already have. Another cool aspect of this game is that it does feature a 3D battlefield because players will not only be able to move around the board, but there'll also be different sections where you can move up or down the board, and having height does give you a tactical advantage if you are able to attack enemies that are lower than you. The players are going to be using their action points to move around on the board or climb or descend, and also to attack any other players, and you'll be able to use the various weapons in order to give you different advantages or better rolls when you do attack. Landing a successful attack does gain you victory points, which will help you towards your final goal. Players might also have different skills and abilities they could take advantage of as well, especially depending on the various items that they've collected, but players can also find new items by opening loot boxes out on the board, and these contain all sorts of valuable rewards, whether it's weapons, armors, credits, or immediate bonus effects. And once a loot box is collected, it's going to be redistributed out on the board so that there are always loot boxes available. The game continues like this until a player reaches 18 points, and then that player wins the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked below. Also on the 8th, we have Brutus, which is a game that I don't have a whole lot of info on, but it is a party card game, and each player is going to be managing a team of gladiators. You're going to be fighting the other players over a series of rounds, and each round there's going to be some changing rules that come into play that are going to be adding a little bit of variety and variation to the game. But players will be able to rig battles and betray each other in order to try and come out on top. And the player that's able to do that best wins the game. But like I said, I don't have a whole lot of details on this one, so if you do want to learn more about it, you have to check it out, but I will have it linked down below. Also launching on October 8th, we have Ultimate Voyage, which is a competitive game where players are each going to be controlling their own fleet of ships as they sail, trade, and explore across the 7 seas. This is a game that takes place during the life of the Admiral Zhang He, who was a famous explorer from China, and the game can come to an end in a few different ways. Either 9 rounds have passed, or the marker on Zhang He's health tracker reaches its end, and the way that that works is that every round there's going to be different events that occur. Some of those events can deteriorate Zhang He's health. This is determined by a die roll each time, which means that if the dice aren't in his favor, he could reach the end of his life before those 9 rounds. This mechanism is based on actual historic events because Admiral Zhang He did have deteriorating health during the time of his exploration. The game can also come to an end anytime a player reaches either 15 prestige points or 15 profit points, and this is a game that does reward you based on the lower of those two. So if you are triggering the end of the game because of that, you want to make sure that you have both of those as high as possible. And the final way that the game can come to an end is if a player completes and reveals 4 different objective cards. The way this game works is that each player is going to be playing as a different character that each has their own special ability, with these abilities normally giving you some sort of advantage for a particular action. As I mentioned before, each round is going to be moving you down the round track, and this can trigger all sorts of different events, like affecting Zhang He's health, but it can also have other effects like determining the weather, which will affect how far players can move when they take a movement action. But 3 dice are also going to be rolled, and then players are going to be taking turns performing their actions by playing an action card and then combining it with one of those 3 dice. The strength of an action is going to be determined by the strength of your card combined with the die that you paired it with, but if you did use that card more recently, it's going to have a decreased strength, so the longer that you go between doing the same action, the more powerful it will be the next time that you use it. The first action players can perform is the sail action, and this is going to allow players to move their ship across the board and visit different locations like ports, but it could also require players going through different storms, which could cost them resources. The next action is the trade action, which allows you to acquire trade goods from ports where your ships are docked, and goods can be used to increase your profit points for the end of the game. Players can also use a diplomacy action at a dock in order to gain a port's affiliation with the Ming Empire, and this is going to be gaining you prestige points for the end of the game. Of course, not all these ports are friendly, and there is also a combat action that you can take in order to attack hostile ports or engage in combat against different encounters. If you're successful, you'll gain control over that port or gain some valuable resources. The final action you can perform is the Explore action, which allows you to gain knowledge tokens from the port where your ship is currently located, and this can provide different story points for the region that you're located, as well as some other bonuses. As players are doing this, they can also complete different objective cards, and the rounds continue like this with the different event happening at the start of each round, and then players taking their various actions in order to gain either prestige points, profit points, or story points through the various rounds. Victory points are then determined by the lower of your prestige points or your profit points, and then you're going to be gaining some additional points based on your story points from exploring those different regions. Then you'll gain additional victory points from completing objective cards and then contributing to the Porcelain Tower of Nanjing. The player with the most total victory points wins the game, and if you want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also launching on the 8th, we have Dragon vs. Kingdom, and this one looks like a really fun pass and write, I guess it would be. The way that this game works is that every player is going to have a grid of paper that represents their kingdom, but on the paper that you are given, you're going to be putting your initials on it to indicate that that one is yours. The cool thing about this game is that every single round, you're going to be passing the sheet that you have to your left and taking the sheet from the player on your right. If the sheet in your hand is one of your opponent's sheets, then you're going to be trying to build up a village on that sheet, which is going to be gaining you victory points based on the different buildings that you decide to build. If you currently have your own sheet that has your initials on it, Then you're going to be acting as the dragon, using your actions to fly the dragon around on the sheet and destroy the various buildings, and that's going to be gaining you victory points. But this is a game where each player takes their actions simultaneously, and each player is going to have a different colored pencil so that everyone can know which drawings on each sheet belong to them. Each round you're going to be able to take 2 different actions, and you have a few different options depending on whether you're playing as the dragon on your own sheet or as a builder on one of your opponent's sheets. If you have one of your opponent's sheets, the different actions you have to choose from is to build a tower to defend a village, build a house near some towers, which will gain you victory points multiplied by the number of towers nearby, or to build a shop, which will gain you victory points multiplied by the nearby houses. Instead of building any of those, you can also use an action to attack a dragon within range from one of your towers that you've already built. But if you choose this action, you can only do it once, and it has to be done before any of the other build actions. When you do attack the dragon, you're going to be rolling a die and trying to achieve a value that's equal or greater than the distance to that dragon. So the closer you are, the easier this is to accomplish. If you land a hit, that's going to be doing damage to the dragon, but also gaining you victory points. But if you have your own sheet passed back to you, then you're going to be playing as the dragon, and you also get 2 actions. But in this case, your different options are either to move up to 3 spaces. And whenever you do that, you're just going to be drawing a line indicating the path of destruction behind you. Or instead, you can move 1 space and then destroy anything in an adjacent space. And when you destroy something, that's going to be gaining you victory points. Or instead, you can stay where you are and breathe fire in any direction. When you do this, you're going to be rolling a die, and that's going to be determining the distance of your fire breath, and you're going to be destroying anything along that path. The game ends anytime a dragon loses all of its health, or if enough buildings have been destroyed by a dragon. At that point, players are going to be adding up their victory points that they've collected across all the sheets, and then the player with the most wins the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also on the 8th, we have Terra Eterna, which is a deck building game that has a few different modes of play, and players will be playing either cooperatively or semi-cooperatively as they play as different heroes with different stats and a different class, and the class of your hero is going to be determining the starting cards that you can choose from. Before a round starts, players are going to be drawing a few adventure cards, and then they're going to be choosing one that they want to tackle. This might have some special rules or cards that you're going to have to include in that specific round. And these different adventures are of varying difficulty, and they're going to be graded with a letter to indicate that. It's going to be up to the players to decide how much they want to push your luck, because of course those more difficult challenges will grant you more points. The main board is going to be set up with a city tile that's located on the bottom here, and that's where all the players are going to be starting. And then there's going to be a bunch of different tiles around the city, which are each going to have different types of terrain on them. And then 2 monster tokens are going to be put on each of those tiles that are matching the associated terrain. All the players then draw a hand of cards from their deck, with the different cards offering you either actions or bonuses, or even just different gear that you can play out in front of you. But players will then take turns going into those different tiles and fighting those monsters in order to liberate those tiles. You can liberate any tiles that are adjacent to you, and when you do that, you're going to be flipping the tile over, drawing a card for each of the monster tokens, and then drawing any additional monster cards for any other icons that might appear on the tile after you flipped it over. This is going to throw you immediately into a battle where you have to fight all of those monsters, and the monsters do attack first. Monsters are going to be attacking by rolling 2 different types of dice. There's going to be dice that they're going to be rolling in order to deal damage. And then there's going to be a single die that determines which character they're going to be attacking. Whatever player that is, they also get to roll dice in order to defend themselves. And if they're able to exceed the amount of damage that the enemy did, then they can actually deal damage back to that enemy. But after you've activated each of the monsters that are involved in the combat, each player is then going to get a turn to attack the monsters. You're going to be doing a roll to attack, just like the monsters did against you. And throughout the battle, you can also be taking advantage of your different items and cards in your hand in order to mitigate dice rolls or get additional actions or augment the actions that you were able to take. But after all the players have attacked, the battle always ends even if you didn't defeat all the monsters. Any undefeated monsters are going to have their health replenished back up to full, and then they're going to be joining the boss battle at the end of the round. After all the players have had a turn to move and liberate a tile, that's going to be triggering the end of the round where you're going to be fighting the final boss based on that chosen adventure. Depending on the outcome, you could gain some positive or negative effects that carry forward, and then the rounds are going to be continuing like this with the length determined by the mode of play, and you're going to be winning or losing based on your cumulative final points. If this one sounds interesting to you, you can check it out and I will have it linked down below. Also on the 8th, we have Echoes of the Predator, and this one is a really interesting one for a few reasons. First of all, this game has a bunch of different endings and outcomes that can occur depending on the decisions and the successes and failures of the players. And secondly, this is a pretty innovative game because it uses this retro-looking electrical board as the actual board in the game. And this is all you need to use to play the game because it has a bunch of buttons built into it. And also it has a bunch of LED lights associated with each of the different rooms here, indicating where each of the characters are as well as the enemy. Because this is a cooperative game where players are crew members in cryostasis aboard a spaceship, but are woken up by their onboard computer due to a hostile entity that has made its way onto the ship. And the third thing I want to mention that makes this game so cool is that this board actually has a voice and it's going to be talking to you as it acts as that onboard computer. I think that's a really nice touch because it just ties the theme in so nicely since you have literally an electronic board speaking to you, but then also representing an onboard computer on a ship. And in case you're wondering, no, this does not use an app. Everything is programmed into this board, so it's going to be maintaining the state aboard the ship. It's also going to be remembering the decisions of the players and the outcomes of those decisions in order to determine what new options might have opened up for you or what sort of path the players are going down. And there's a really nice video here that's going to walk you through a few rounds of the game, but I just wanted to show it here so you could see what it actually looks like with the different LEDs lighting up and the different colored LEDs representing the different characters as well as the monster as it moves around on the ship. But on a player's turn, they can choose to move in any direction or stay put in the same area, or even try the ventilation systems, which does make you move twice as quickly as normal, but it prevents you from being able to take any other actions. Movement does have a chance of creating noise, which will make the alien target you, and the alien does move twice as fast as the players when the players aren't moving through the ventilation. But once you've finished your movement, you can decide what to do in the room that you're currently in, and one of the options is to hide, which will help you lose the alien if it's chasing you, but it doesn't always work. And if that's the case, there is also the distract action, which other players could use to intentionally make noise to draw the alien towards them. Or you could use the arm action, which will allow you to arm yourself with a weapon if there is something that can be used as a weapon in the room that you're currently located in. And it doesn't have to be a good weapon, it just has to be something to defend you from the alien, because once you have a weapon, you can actually defend yourself against the alien if it does catch up with you. Some weapons have more success than others, but it does give you a chance to escape, likely at the cost of the weapon. But the alien could wound you as well, even if you do have a weapon. But if you didn't have a weapon, it doesn't matter how many wounds you have, you just die. That's why it's really important to have a weapon. And the last action you can perform is the search action, which allows you to find all sorts of special items and clues. And these can be combined in different ways in order to access new areas or find special items, or even grant you with all sorts of different bonuses. Players are going to be continuing to move around the ship and take actions and try to evade the alien, with the goal of trying to get enough supplies so that they can actually survive leaving the ship. Once players feel like they're either ready or like they've run out of options, then they're going to be trying to make their way to the escape pod chamber, and then activate their exit, hopefully with the other crew members with you. Sometimes it's more important to save yourself if you don't think your crew members are going to be making it to you before the alien finds you. But all of these decisions are going to be giving you different outcomes and endings, giving you a lot of variety and different things to discover every time that you play this game. Of course, the best outcome is that you all get to the escape pod and you get enough supplies so that you all survive the trip. And who knows, you might even find a way to trigger a self-destruct sequence or something like that to make sure that this alien doesn't bother anyone else in the future. If this one sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. I will have it linked down below. And of course, you can click to get notified once this one launches. Also on the 8th, we have Fest Season, and this one is a competitive game of rock and roll where players are trying to build the most successful festival. Players are going to be setting up stages and booths and amenities, and you're going to be creating a layout using different tiles and hiring different bands, which you're going to be assigning to different stages and different time slots during the festival. This game offers a bunch of different ways that you can gain victory points, but one of the main ways is to try and keep 3 specific tracks as high as possible. These are your amenities track, your attendance track, and your ticket price track. The reason you want these tracks each as high as possible is because you're going to be gaining points from the one that's the lowest of the 3. And the main board is designed to look like a guitar amp, and there's going to be a few different knobs to keep track of the popularity of the different types of genres. And there's also going to be 3 different areas that offer 3 different types of actions, and each of those are going to have a slider like this located on them, and every time that action is taken by any player, that slider is going to be moving up and granting the player with whatever bonus the slider hits. One of the action locations allows you to build stages or buildings, and whenever you do that, you're going to be gaining the associated tile and placing it out on your board. And these different tiles can grant you victory points or add icons to your board, which might unlock other things, or they can also trigger different combos depending on where you place them. Also, anytime that you cover an icon on your board, you're going to be gaining that associated benefit. But of course, a festival isn't a festival without the music, and there is an action location that does allow you to hire different bands. Each band will be of a different genre and might have different requirements on stage size or icons needed to be in your park in order for them to agree to play at your park. But hiring the right bands can increase your hype, and anytime that a band is hired of a particular genre, the associated knob is going to be moving up, increasing the popularity of that genre. When you hire a band, you're going to be assigning it to a time slot on one of your stages, and anytime you get a stage, you're going to be getting one of these associated schedules matching that stage's name. And what you're trying to do here is assign bands of different genres during the same time slot, because people are coming to your festival to see their favorite genre, and if you have 2 bands of the same genre playing at the same time, they're not going to be able to see them both, which means that you'll only gain victory points from one of them, so you really want to make sure that you're putting the same genre in different time slots. And the last action location has a bunch of different project cards in it that will grant you with some sort of benefit if you're able to meet the requirements. And you can take that action if there is a particular project that you want to try and complete. And each unique type of project that you do complete is going to be moving you further down the victory point track. There's also additional shared objectives that players can try to complete, and you're going to be racing for those in order to get the most victory points from them. But at the end of the game, you're going to be adding up all your points from your different tracks, as well as your objective cards and project cards, and the player with the most victory points at that point wins the game. If you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And also on the 8th, we have Delivery Witches, and this one is a competitive pick up and deliver game where players are trying to deliver different packages while also mastering the art of their broomstick. Each turn, players have 4 different actions that they can choose from. They can move between the different adjacent locations out on the board, or instead they can choose to spend coins or skill points in order to buy a better broom or improve their broom or improve their skills. But if they find themselves located on a pickup space, another action you can perform is the Accept a Delivery action, and this allows you to draw a delivery card, which is going to tell you the number of packages that need to be delivered and the color of the region that it needs to be delivered to. Players can also deliver packages, which is a free action. All you have to do is fly over the location. You're going to be rewarded with the coins or skill points that that delivery card grants you. Players will also be earning medals for their deliveries depending on the requirements that they're able to meet, and the player that reaches 4 medals first is going to be triggering the final round of the game. And then once that round's completed, the player with the most victory points wins the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And this next one I just found out about, so I didn't get a chance to look into it quite as deep as the other games, but this one is called Draconis 8, and this one is a trading card game that also has an associated app. So when you do get a deck of cards here, you'll also be able to scan the QR code on the back of it, which is going to get you the digital version of those cards as well, which you can go ahead and use inside the app. Because I just found this one, I didn't get a chance to look into the gameplay on this one, but it does look like they already have some videos on their campaign page, as well as a bunch of details about how the game plays. So if you do want to check this one out, I suggest just checking out the campaign page in the description below, and checking out those videos that are already posted on it. As always, if you do like what you see, you can go ahead and click that Notify Me button to get notified once it launches. Also on the 8th, we have another game that I just briefly got to look into, but this one is called Capybattle, and this is a 2-player head-to-head strategy game where each turn you're going to be moving your monarch pieces from capybara to capybara, activating the corresponding action that aligns with the row and column of that capybara. You can see there's a bunch of different action tokens that are randomized around the perimeter of the board, and those are the different actions that you'll have access to. Players are going to be using these actions to try and dominate enough areas on the board in order to win the game. And I don't know exactly what all these actions do, but there is an action that helps you move capybaras, bait enemy capybaras into a new location, build structures, use secret passages, or simply take a nap. If you want to know the finer details of this one, you'll have to check out the campaign because I couldn't find much more than that, but I will have the link to the campaign in the description down below, and of course you can follow to get notified once this one launches. That's everything for this week, but as usual, we do have a ton of giveaways to announce, so you don't want to leave yet. And I'm going to be running 2 of these giveaways on YouTube here in the YouTube comments, and I'm going to run the rest on the Discord because the Discord does need some love once in a while. We had a ton of giveaways last week, and we have even more this week, and I still have even more in the queue, so if you do like entering in on these giveaways, that is a nice reason to subscribe on top of all the really helpful info. And the first giveaway we have is for a pledge for Vrahode Age of Prophecy, and this one's a cooperative narrative adventure, and it's going to be introducing you to the brand new system offered from this creator. This is just the first in a line of games that's going to be released, and this game does offer a full standalone experience, but this one is acting as a prelude to the base game that will be released sometime next year. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of content with that, but this one here is nothing to sneeze at because there's going to be a ton of different characters and bosses, and what I really like about this one is that it offers you 24 different maps that are all preset for you to jump into those specific scenarios. This is a very similar system to other board games in the genre that use a booklet in order to present the maps, and they normally have you turn to a page, and then you're going to be using those pages as your map with all the specific rules and scenario objectives outlined in that booklet. But what I like more about this one is that since they're using actual boards here, you're going to be much more immersed in the experience, and it's going to have much more of a premium quality. And the maps are also going to be a lot bigger and easier to play on than playing within a booklet. Players are also going to have these really nice boards to keep track of all the different items and stat upgrades and progress of their characters. And this is a game where players are primarily going to be using cards in order to take their actions, but in order to actually use those cards, you're going to have to spend a particular resource, which is going to limit the amount of actions that you can take. Of course, those resources have other uses as well, so you will have some really fun decisions when it comes to deciding how you want to spend those valuable resources. And this giveaway is going to be for a core pledge, which will get you everything that you need to play this game, and they will also offer free shipping anywhere within North America. But if you are interested in entering this giveaway and you're located outside of North America, you still can feel free to enter. Just keep in mind that you will have to cover your shipping. All you have to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag adventure, and you can say anything that you want, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know of your next upcoming adventure. For myself, I mentioned this at the start of the video, but I do have a trip planned to go to New Jersey for the Level Up Retreat, which, if you're not familiar with, is a little bit of a convention run by Alex over at Boardgame Co. It's a lot of fun, definitely recommend it, and it'd be really cool to see you there, so if you do want to check it out, I will have a link to that in the description too. But even before that, I am considering going to PAX Unplugged. I haven't confirmed anything yet, but I will let you know if that one does pan out. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Sibille, where players are going to be competing as fortune tellers, trying to be the first to complete a certain amount of objectives. The way this game works is that you're going to be using tarot cards in order to take your actions, and each player is going to have a hand of these cards. You're going to be placing them down in front of you in secret. What's cool about this is that you can also place 3 more cards down, and you're going to be using those cards to try and predict what you think the other players are going to do. As players are revealing their cards and taking their actions, if a player does an action that you predicted, then that's going to be granting you a nice little bonus. But players will be using those actions to gain different types of resources or move up different tracks, which can grant you all sorts of different bonuses, gain different objective cards, or, of course, attract those customers or even manipulate them in different ways. This giveaway is going to be for a deluxe edition of the game, which is going to get you a copy of the game with all the unlocks and stretch goals and upgraded components. This one's going to be offered mostly worldwide, so if you're located in North America, the UK, the EU, Australia, or New Zealand, you can feel free to leave a comment down below with the hashtag fortune, and that'll get you entered in next week's draw. And I should mention that if you also want to check out any of these games that we're offering up for giveaway this week, I will also have them linked in the description too. And the rest of these giveaways are going to be drawn automatically on the Discord in the description down below, and all you got to do to enter them is head over to the Discord and click the little emoji underneath that giveaway. I have this set up so that 4 winners will be drawn, and then whichever order you're drawn in, that is the game that you'll win. I do want to mention that there's no catch here. I don't have any notifications turned on, and you're not going to get spammed with anything for joining our Discord. But if you do want notifications for anything, you can just head over to the rules channel, and if you click the associated emojis on that channel, it'll actually sign you up for whatever notifications you want, including getting notified of any giveaways that I announce here. I also have a channel for every campaign that I talk about in these videos, and you can also look further into the future and join in on the conversations there. And if that's not enough of a reason already, we do also have a channel where you can go ahead and catch yourself some Pokemon. And all these giveaways are also going to be offered worldwide, so you don't have to worry about your location. And the first giveaway we have is for a pledge for Quest Snakes. And this is a game where players are going to be drafting different types of snakes at the beginning of the game. They're going to have different levels and different amount of power and a different amount of cooldown that you're going to have to wait before you're able to use them again, because after the drafting phase is completed, players are going to be moving into a quest phase. Every round there's going to be a new quest drawn, and then players are going to be assigning any of the cards that they want that are applicable to that quest. Some quests might have different requirements that you'll have to meet in order to complete that quest or be eligible to enter it, and you will have to meet those requirements, but other than that, it's the player who contributes the most amount of strength who will be winning that quest and the associated victory points. And this giveaway is for their biggest, baddest deluxe pledge, which I believe is this one here, which gets you a copy of the game as well as the collector's box and all of the expansions and upgrades. But they might actually have been referring to this one here because they do have a even bigger pledge. This one's going to be adding all of their merch to the pledge. Not exactly sure which one it is, but these are both really nice pledges, so either way you're going to be getting something really great here. And like I said, super easy to enter. Just head over to our Discord in the description below, head over to the giveaways channel, and then just click the emoji underneath that giveaway. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Cerro, Gordo Silver Mines. And this one is a competitive city building game where players are all going to be contributing to the main city and its mines. Players are going to be playing as different characters, each with their own unique abilities. And on your turn, you're going to be able to play some road tiles and a building tile onto the main area. Then you'll be able to move your character and possibly mine some silver. What you also get to do is draw another tile because each of the tiles have events on them. And you're going to be looking at that event, which is going to be giving you some sort of extra action or bonus that you'll then get to put into play. Players are going to be doing all of this and placing those tiles in particular ways to try and complete different objectives in order to earn the most silver and win the game. And this giveaway is going to be for the deluxe limited edition version of the game, which is going to get you this really nice foil box as well as all the upgraded components. And to enter this, it's the same as the last one. Just head over to the Discord and click the little emoji underneath that giveaway. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Doomcat, and this one is a really neat roll and write because this is a game where players are going to be rolling dice. You're going to be using those dice to try and draw lines between the associated values out on your sheet. The whole goal here is to try and encapsulate other areas of your sheet in order to gain the bonus of whatever it is that you can encapsulate. The catch here is that whatever die you don't use is actually going to be removing that as an option from your sheet for the rest of the game. So you're going to have fewer and fewer options and tougher decisions to make as the game continues. This giveaway will get you a copy of the game, and once again, all you got to do is head to the Discord in the description and click the emoji underneath that giveaway. And the last giveaway we have is for a pledge for Aetherspire, the 3D board game. And the way that this game works is that players are going to be taking turns performing actions in order to either put out a tile on the board or to put different pillars on those tiles in order to place another tile. There's going to be 4 different towers that you're trying to build in order to defeat 4 different bosses, with each round passing potentially adding a new boss's negative effects into the game, making the game harder as the game goes on, unless you're able to eliminate that specific boss. This is a game that's centered around all the different elements, so players will be able to gain different resources of those elements and use them to activate special abilities or special actions on their turn, in addition to building up these towers. There's also different threats that can show up on the board, and if they're not taken care of, they can deal damage to the players. And if you take too much damage, then that is one of the ways you can lose the game. This giveaway is going to get you a deluxe edition of the game. You can find a link to the Discord down below. Click that emoji and it'll get you entered in that giveaway as well as all the others. This will get automatically drawn at the end of the week, and I will also reach out to any of the winners, so just try to keep an eye on your messages. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners from last week's giveaways, and I'm super excited for anyone that wins here because I want all of these games and I will be super jealous. First one is for a pledge for both Skara, Brae, and the Anarchy, and then we also have a pledge for Deliverance, as well as DinoGenics, Ice and Idols, and Snow Planner. And to actually draw a winner, I'm going to be using this application here, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my members over on Ko-fi who help support this channel. I don't take any money or games from publishers in order to offer my content, except for the rare times that they just send me a game anyway, and if that's the case, I do always include it on the channel doing a bit of a playthrough. But if you appreciate all the work that goes into this, researching all the games and organizing all these giveaways each and every week, and you're able to help support the channel, I truly do appreciate it, and I do have a link to my Ko-fi in the description down below. But I did actually notice that I can actually draw multiple winners at once here, so I think we're going to go ahead and try that this week. So we're going to be drawing for Skara, Brae, as well as Deliverance and Snow Planner, because those are the 3 that are offered worldwide. And if you get drawn here, I'm going to be matching the winners in the order that they were drawn with the way that I just mentioned those games. And I already drew the comments here, so let's go ahead and draw the winners. And the winners are first-time gamer, long-time listener who is a winner here on YouTube, and they're going to be winning Skara, Brae, as well as the Anarchy. And then we have William L. Everson from Ko-fi, who's going to be winning Deliverance. And then we have Chris Spies, who's going to be winning Snow Planner. Congrats to everyone on the wins here. I will reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a pledge, but if you do catch this before I'm able to do that, I am really busy this month, so you can feel free to email me at adam@shelfclutter.com, and it'll just make it a little bit easier for me. Now let's go ahead and draw for Ice and Idols, and I already threw the hashtag in here, so let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. I already did draw the comments, it's just a force of habit for me to say it. But we have another winner from the YouTube comments here, and this one is QWERTY Presser, so just feel free to email me at adam@shelfclutter.com, and we'll get that pledge all sorted out for you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the channel and joining in on the fun. And last but not least here, we have a pledge for DinoGenics, the New Arrivals campaign, and we're going to be doing the same thing here. Let's just throw in Dino. And I actually don't have to draw the comments because they just update instantly, but I'll do it anyway. And let's draw the winner. And the winner is... And we have another winner from the YouTube comments, and this one is Alex Anderschved 5978. Congratulations on the win here. Once again, just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and I'll get that pledge all sorted out for you. Some really nice giveaways here, and I just want to thank everyone who did leave a comment on the video. Even if you didn't end up winning, I still do appreciate it, and it does incentivize publishers to do even more giveaways in the future, which does give you more chances to win. And like I said, we do have a ton more opportunities both on this video in the comment section as well as over on the Discord. So feel free to take advantage of that. It's free to do. You don't have to like or subscribe or anything like that. And your odds are actually pretty good. That's everything I have for you this week. Quite a lot of games, and I don't think it's going to be slowing down anytime soon, so we at least have a few more weeks of this. Hopefully you're able to save some money, but if not, just be happy that you're able to keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.